The Indo-European languages, a family of languages spoken around the world. Espanol the way from Iceland to India, in various branches and scripts, some of which make a hella neck tattoo. This was the result of a wild ride, with Norwegian left untouched. But we need to be careful here, as in the past we made some mistakes while rushing to conclusions. However, when we took a moment to check and polish things up a little, we could Bengali together into a great story, even further than many early linguists could Farsi. In the end, in the end, in the end, in the end, this is where it brought us. There's a lot in here to get through, and I don't quite know what I'm doing, but well, we're in this together. I just ran out of just my drink ran out. I'm gonna need to get some Marathi. Oh. This video is dedicated to a very special friend of mine, and I don't think anyone's given them an introduction to linguistics. So I'll start from scratch and I'll see if I can explain as much as possible without leaving things unexplained. Firstly, let's start off by discussing what a language family is. Unlike human families where it takes two to make one, with languages it takes one to make two, or more. For example, Latin, over time, changed into different dialects and eventually different languages, called the Romance languages. A little family, but part of a much larger one. When we have multiple languages descended from one language, we call the ancestor a proto-language, and the descendants daughter languages. Typically, the family itself will be named after geography, that is to say, where it's spoken, or by a standout language within the family. With the Romance languages, it's very easy because we have written evidence that they came from Latin, but how could we say, without writing, that two languages are related? Even if you were to take away all the writing, there is so much that Spanish and Italian have in common. You cannot really say that two languages with no relationship could have that naturally. What exactly do we mean, though? Languages change. English has certainly changed since the time of Beowulf to the Middle Ages to Shakespeare and now. One of the ways it has changed is by borrowing a lot of words from French, Latin and Greek. But even then, if you look at the most common everyday words, they aren't borrowed, but just descend from an earlier stage of the language. When trying to see whether two languages are related, we really have to test these particular words, because they are less likely to change or get borrowed. If we find that there is a systematic correspondence that could not have appeared randomly, then we say that these two languages are related. In fact, we could even try to see what the proto-language looked like. When we compare words for immediate family members, or very small numbers, or farm animals, or everyday verbs, we can quite easily tell if two languages are related. Let's take the word for brother. You can see that the words for brother are very similar to each other, in a way that can't be random. We call these cognates, words in different languages that came from a single source in an ancestral language. It could sometimes be difficult to see it because of the sound change. Remember, languages do change over time, and one of the ways they do is sound shifts. That being said, if two languages have the same sounds in the same positions, it's likely that it was once a single sound. Let's take Gothic and Latin. Latin words that begin with a d typically begin with a t in Gothic. Duo, tuai. Dense. It's worth noting that it has a t in there somewhere. Tunthus. Decem. Terhun. Deus. Tius. This is just one of many consistent sound correspondences that we call Grimm's law. More on that in a different video. For now, just know that these words in two different languages having the same meanings and consistently the same two sounds can only mean that it came from an older ancestor. Okay, I just got a message on the phone. Another thing that really hits this home is the grammar. When we compare the grammar of especially older Indo-European languages, we find a lot in common. For one, they're usually fusional, and they typically show the same features. Okay, let me explain what that means. In different languages, words can have different amounts of information built into them. Some languages will have less information in a word, and instead use more words to fill in the gaps. Some languages will have more information in a word and less strict word order. These are called analytic and synthetic languages. Synthetic languages can take different approaches to show this information. Japanese, for example, will have different building blocks that you can glue together. This is called agglutination. Others, like Sanskrit, will have a single block that can tell you a lot of information. This is called fusion. This is the one that Proto-Indo-European likely had, because the earliest recorded daughter languages were heavily fusional. To explain this one, I'll go over the languages individually and explain their grammar. For now, we can see that the grammatical similarity with the declensions, the verbs, it's too much to be a coincidence. I didn't put this in the script, but I should just mention the fact that they get more similar to each other the further back in time you go. It's a big indication that it came from one language.
Okay, Jeff.
What makes Indo-European languages quite unique is that it's a very well-balanced language family. With so many others, you have one or two standout languages, but with Indo-European, you have many prestigious languages, with thousands of years of recorded history. One reason that Indo-European may have had the edge could be horses. We can reconstruct a word for horse, meaning that the ancestors likely had domesticated horses, and the cognates that we have lead us to believe that the speakers of Proto-Indo-European was somewhere in Central Europe, specifically the steppe region. And not only cognates, but we also have DNA evidence as well, but more on that in another time. Alongside that, a genetic analysis of horse DNA suggests that horses were first domesticated in this very region.
In a paper published in 2021, a team of over 160 researchers sequenced the genomes of 273 ancient horses from across Eurasia, covering the last 50,000 years. And they found that up until around 4,000 years ago, Eurasia had a diverse community of wild horses with a lot of genetically distinct lineages spread across the region. Then, pretty suddenly, one lineage of horses just exploded, spreading rapidly across the continent and replacing other horses as it went. This sudden shift marked the rise of the domestic lineage that all of our modern horses descend from. And the researchers were able to pinpoint the origin of this lineage to the region of what's now Russia, around the Volga and Don rivers. There, around 4,200 years ago, people began domesticating and breeding those horses in huge numbers.
Civilization game changers. It's remarkable to think that from thousands BC until the telegraph, a dude on a horse was the best internet available. Horses were domesticated in Eurasia, but
Whether it comes to transportation or communication or warfare or agriculture, these guys will give anybody an edge. However, that is just a hypothesis, alongside a milk hypothesis as well.
Cow juice.
But we don't have any confirmed answers for how exactly they were so dominant. Well, I didn't realize how difficult it would be to make a video on Indo-European. And there's still so many things to cover. Anyways, I nearly slapped everything in sight while writing the damn script. There's still so much to discuss. Even then, this is just a rough video, it's practice. And then after that, I'll go over the different languages like Latin, Gothic, Greek, Sanskrit, and so on, so that we have a better idea of what these similarities are, just beyond me telling you that they are there. I'll see you then. I need to go to bed.